I'm Jennifer Perry Thalheimer, and I am the Museum Director and Chief Curator here at the Morse Museum of American Art. We are so honored to be celebrating our 25th anniversary of having the chapel here at the Morse Museum. It is an incredible celebration because during its lifetime, it was almost lost so many times. It was created for the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, and Tiffany really wanted to be a part of it. Tiffany had just opened an ecclesiastical department in 1889, and so this was incredibly important because the 1893 fair was the perfect opportunity for him to be able to promote things to churches. And it was an incredible place for him with a lot of visitation. So he designed the Tiffany Chapel in a Romanesque Byzantine style that really drew a lot of attention. He gathered some of his most important windows. They were labor intensive with glass that he had to work with special glass companies. He hadn't even formed his own glass company yet. And so what you see that was created for the World's Columbian Exposition was something that was at the beginning of what Tiffany became known for. And so being able to walk here to the Morse Museum, sit down and enjoy this moment in history is something that's incredibly exciting. The chapel had a very long life. It started at the World's Fair in 1893, but it was such an enormous success from there that Tiffany brought it back to New York City to show in his showroom there. And then crowds came to the city showroom to see this. And one of the vast crowds that came through was a woman named Celia Whipple Wallace, who wanted to purchase the chapel and donate it to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which was then under construction. The architect, halfway through the construction, actually changed. And Tiffany and the new architect, Ralph Adams Cram, had butted heads on past commissions. And so that became an issue when Ralph Adams Cram was creating his Gothic architecture, and Tiffany's Byzantine Romanesque chapel was not going to make it up into the chapels. And so it remained in the crypt even after the chapels had been built. So Tiffany became concerned when in 1914, he realized that the chapel remained in the crypt and was actually falling into disrepair. It was in such a bad state that he requested that it be removed and brought out to build a chapel at Laurelton Hall, his country estate on Long Island. Laurelton Hall was a gathering of objects that really represented Tiffany's best commissions and the things that he did from his heart. And so the chapel became really a center point for that. It was an incredibly important part. Tiffany even at one point considered that he would be buried in the chapel. In 1918, Tiffany opened the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation at Laurelton Hall and donated the land and all of the buildings, including this impressive chapel, to the foundation. And it was his intention that this foundation would live on forever. And even to this day, he hopes that it would house his most impressive objects. Unfortunately, after Tiffany's death, and the foundation realized the financial requirements of maintaining buildings, they sold off in the 1940s property and most of the contents that were at Laurelton Hall. This is where Hugh and Jeanette McCain, our founders, come into the picture. So after the property for the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation was sold and all of the elements within it were sold, it was in 1957 that the house finally burned down. The good and bad news was that some of the most important windows that Tiffany had were still in the home and some of the home furnishings. And it was around this time that Hugh and Jeanette McCain went to the site and realized how much there was to salvage and felt that they had to save every element that they possibly could. And that's what forms the foundation here at the museum of this incredible Tiffany collection.
So in 1997, the Morse embarked on a pretty extensive conservation project to reconstruct and install the chapel here at the Morse. So this was composed of a team of curators, conservators, engineers, researchers coming together and trying to reconstruct the chapel as it was installed at Laurelton Hall. So they used period photographs, drawings, and images from the Chicago World's Fair and Laurelton Hall, trying to bring this chapel back to the way that it would have been originally seen. And something really interesting about the project is that this team of conservators and curators and scholars all worked and lived at a property and off-site storage facility that the Morse used to own on Wellborn. They spent all their time there working, trying to reconstruct the chapel, and it finally opened to the public in April of 1999. So this fall, in celebration of the chapel's 25th anniversary, we're installing a show in the chapel anteroom. It's going to be called After the Fair.
This celebration of the 25th anniversary is really an incredible opportunity to show the linking between our first director, Hugh McCain, the second director, Lawrence Ruggiero, who was responsible for actually bringing this to life, being able to bring all of the elements together and build onto the Morse Museum so that people can enjoy this building. It's especially exciting to have a large-scale mosaic come into the collection on loan from the Newsack collection and reunite it for the first time since 1893 and have it here at the Morse Museum.
The journey that this mosaic has had is really extraordinary. Fathers of the Church is an incredibly important mosaic, not only because it was exhibited at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, but also because it was the first mosaic made by the women from the Tiffany studios. It was created by women in the women's glass cutting department in about 1892. The mosaic is a design that was created by Joseph Lauber, and it depicts 3 early Christian theologians. And we have, starting on the left, John Chrysostom, and then Saint Augustine and Saint Ambrose on the far right. One of the things that's also really important about this mosaic is that it's an early figural mosaic. When you look at the chapel here at the Morse Museum, it's this sort of wonderful harmony of pattern and color with the mosaic work. But here we have 3 figures depicted in an incredibly lifelike manner. Another really exciting thing about this mosaic is that it blends historical styles with this modern American innovation of using multicolored opalescent glass. So here we see in the background this beautiful wash of gold, which references mosaics from the Byzantine era that we would see in Ravenna. But then the figures are rendered very sensitively in this carefully selected multicolored pieces of glass that really bring these 3 figures to life. So look at the way that the figures' faces are rendered. You see lines, you see hollows of cheeks, you see bags under the eyes that suggest the age of these wizened men. It's this really brilliant combination of a historic style with this American innovation, this groundbreaking use of multicolored glass.
We at the Morse are so grateful to Hugh and Jeanette McCain for saving this material for us to see now, and also to the Board of Trustees of the Morse and Lawrence Ruggiero for taking the painstaking time and effort and commitment to bringing it to the Morse. And we invite you to share our enthusiasm and come and visit and spend some time here.